The Galactic Civil War was the ultimate protest by the civilian population. Prosecution and indictment against the one individual the galaxy held responsible for all of their suffering, toil, and losses. This war was the price Emperor Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, paid for being so foolish to desire the mantle of leadership, because with the power of rule comes responsibility for failure. The question is, who is sitting on the opposite side of this chessboard from Palpatine? Who is the true mastermind behind this rebellion? A rebellion that was a relatively organic movement that grew from many sources and was ultimately a response to Palpatine's ineptitude more than anything else. A rebellion that had as many gripes as it did leaders. This was a completely decentralized movement, especially in the earlier years. You had politicians like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa. Full of ideology and wealth, they were secretly siphoning funds away to the rebellion, building an infrastructure for a future movement and war, if necessary. You also had broadcasters like Ephraim and Mira Bridger, who fought the information war against the Empire. You also had a wide range of soldiers, ranging from the more destructive ones like Saw Gerrera to local revolutionaries like Cham Samdula to Jedi heroes like Kanan Jarrus and old Clone Wars veterans like Captain Rex. Financiers, propagandists, and many soldiers. Alone, they could do damage against the Empire in their own ways, but without coordination, they would ultimately fail. They would ultimately be surrounded and destroyed by the Empire's superior manpower and resources. And so in true chaotic rebel fashion, the individual who ultimately ended up guiding this movement was not chosen by his peers. Very few people actually knew his name or identity. If anything, by the time all those fresh-faced moisture farmers and transport pilots took off against the Death Star at Yavin 4, his name had already been left behind, long resigned to the lost pages of history. He was in the company of other forgotten individuals, like Jar Jar Binks, Coleman Trebor, and Caleb the Healer. The individual we're talking about, of course, is Luthen Rael. He is perhaps my favorite Star Wars character. His codename Axis is most fitting, as he is the central line around which the entire rebel body revolves, a line that has a steadfast focus and determination to see one thing through: the destruction of the Empire. And this man, in many ways, if you think about it, is very similar to Darth Sidious. His strategy, his actions almost mirror those of the Sith, whilst they were in hiding for almost 1,000 years during the Jedi's Golden Age. Even their appearance is quite similar, and both Luthen Rael and Palpatine have two personas. First, you have the public-facing persona. For Sidious, that means Senator, then Chancellor Sheev Palpatine. For Luthen Rael, it's his front of being the owner of galactic antiquities and objects of interest. Both individuals' public face are likable, cosmopolitan, cultured, people who surround themselves with beauty, history, and the arts. They dress in the latest fashions. Luthen Rael wouldn't look so out of place amongst the landed gentry of Naboo, along with Sheev Palpatine. Both Luthen and Palpatine are quick with a smile, eager conversationalists, people who try to please others as much as possible. Their end goal, of course, is to extract as much information from the people around them without giving any hint of themselves in return. They place themselves in high circles, surrounded by the elite, rich, and powerful. They carefully gather information on these individuals, what they like, what they need, and they ingratiate themselves to everyone. They find a way to be indisposable, to be of service. And by doing this, they carefully gather these individuals into their pockets, not as friends, but as assets, something disposable to be used to fulfill their singular mission in the future. Then there's that second personality. For Darth Sidious, he is a Sith Lord, a part of the Rule of Two, an organization that for hundreds of years have been plotting in the shadows to bring down the Republic and their hated Jedi foe. Luthen Rael, on the other hand, is a spy master, an individual who carefully acts as a negotiator and liaison between the various factions of the rebellion. Although he is not elected to be in this position, he chooses to guide all of these individual branches of the rebellion towards one main objective. To live two separate lives and have these two personalities is quite difficult. For someone to successfully pull this off, they have to be grounded in something. They need to have a cause, a singular purpose that can drive them forward. For Palpatine, the stress must have been extraordinary when he was still undercover, mingling with none other than the Jedi Order on a daily basis, powerful wizards and witches who could potentially sense his own Force powers if he's not careful. Palpatine needed to be in control of everything he said. He needed to be in control of his emotions, his Force powers. He He was essentially an actor on a stage. Luthen Rael's stage was a bit more off-Broadway, but nonetheless his preparation for his role is made with painstaking effort, as during the Imperial period there were spies and eyes all over the place. And for Luthen Rael's transformation, it was about a lot more than just washing one's face, donning a wig, and putting on a fancy robe and rings. Just like how Palpatine must hide his internal dark side and true self, Luthen Rael must also wash away the darkness of his actions before presenting a much sunnier and pleasant face as an eccentric and likable shopkeeper of odd trinkets. An individual who has a very particular skill, the ability to find priceless things that individuals with everything desire. Palpatine and Luthen Rael put forth so much effort to conceal their nature because ultimately their true selves are unacceptable. Before we continue, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video. Winter is coming, and as men enter our holiday hibernation stage, things can get pretty shaggy, especially by the time Christmas comes around. And I'm not just talking about our lumberjack beards and chest hair, I'm also talking about the boys. I call mine Popeye and Roy Rogers. Keeping your undergrowth nicely trimmed and sorted is the number one to make sure you're looking your best down there, either when you were the ladies or streaking at a local sporting event. And there's no tool I would trust more around my precious sacks of manhood than Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. With a 7,200 RPM motor, this thing purrs and is smooth. It features two interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, the skin-safe trimmer blade for precision, and the skin-safe foil blade for a close cut. I would demonstrate for you guys, but Manscaped said it was completely unnecessary. As a matter of fact, they stressed that point when they gave me feedback about this ad. Anyway, this is the modern age, guys. Embrace change. We men no longer have to use beard trimmers, scissors, or God forbid, a straight razor on our precious jewels. I mean, this thing even has an LED spotlight to help you see in the darkest of holes, illuminate things that have never been illuminated before. This isn't just a shaving experience, guys. It's an adventure. So what are you waiting for? Get your Performance Pack 5.0 Ultra from Manscaped. It also comes with a Weed Whacker 2.0 for nose and ear hairs and a free gift of Boxers 2.0 and Shed 2.0 carrying bag. Also, don't forget to use my promo code GTECH, that's all caps, and you'll get 20% off, plus free international shipping at checkout. Thank you for your patience, and do it for the boys. Luthen Rael and Chief Palpatine both found themselves in the center of their enemy's power on Coruscant, and when their masks are removed, they are serious individuals who are fanatic in their pursuit of the mission. Darth Sidious understood through his teachings from Darth Plagueis and the rest of the rule of two Sith that he must conceal his true intentions until he is ready to strike, and it takes great patience to know when that moment comes. Remember, the Sith have been in hiding for 1,000 years. And as such, Darth Sidious developed a habit of thinking many steps ahead of his enemies. The many possible outcomes of his actions haunted him on a daily basis and always consumed his thoughts. This was a paranoia that was welcomed because it kept him hidden and protected in this very public role. Luthen Rael also had to be many steps ahead of those who hunted him as well, even if it meant sacrificing assets to cover his source, like he did with Anton Krieger's cell. The former separatists were planning an attack on an Imperial power station on the planet of Spellhouse, when one of Krieger's pilots gets caught in a routine sweep and gives up the plot. Luthen Rael's mole within the ISB informs him of the situation. Luthen Rael could have warned Krieger's men that they were walking into a trap, but instead, he decides to sacrifice them. Soldiers for a spy.
Krieger goes down, the ISB will feel invincible. They'll feel untouchable. We'll have a clear field to play. The alternative, Krieger pulls out, we wave him off, they'll know they'll have to wonder.
Yes, Luthen Rael does show some remorse over his actions.
You're willing to burn him.
You're the random factor.
He stud him in.
Plus Krieger.
So you know he's doomed.
But he's still willing to go through with it, and this is what makes him special. Luke Skywalker would have tried to save Krieger. So would Jyn Erso, Princess Leia, heck, even Han Solo probably. But Luthen Rael is not the heroic type. I mean, he is realistic, pragmatic, and he's more importantly able to see the larger picture. He excels at being cold and calculating in his decision-making processes. In this way, he is unburdened from morality in the same way that Palpatine is. And that is because mentally he is disciplined. He is able to compartmentalize his actions, his crimes, into other parts of his brain so he can remain focused on what he needs to do. This is the true nature of rebellion. To fight an organization as evil and powerful as the Empire, you must adopt a ruthlessness that matches your enemy. This is not something that New Republic propagandists are going to be talking about once they've won the war. This is something that makes them uneasy. If you want to naively believe that every individual in the rebellion was a hero, a knight in shining armor, then just watch the original trilogy. Watch a bunch of rebels whose hardest decisions are always the right decision. Luke, Princess Leia, Han Solo, they're never forced to make the actual tough decisions that real leaders in a desperate insurgency have to make. Decisions that make you look like a monster. Decisions that require paragraphs upon paragraphs of text to justify and understand. To fight a merciless empire, you'll have to burn allies, murder innocent people, do things so drastic that it becomes hard to face oneself in the mirror. You have to accept the consequences of leadership, be willing to sacrifice the people beneath you for the greater cause. And even though Luthen Rael does this with a lot more reluctance than Palpatine ever did, he is just as ready to manipulate, just as efficient at twisting the arms of his underlings to get what he wants. Take Lonnie, for instance. He's Luthen's hidden ISB asset, the individual he protected by sacrificing Anton Krieger. He's a father now, and that kind of changes everything for him. He wants out.
You love your daughter. Krieger's men will be dying to make sure she has a father. You're trapped, Lonnie. There's no pleasure in saying it, but you're going nowhere.
Luthen even possesses that famous, dripping sarcasm that Palpatine has when he delivers his lines.
My sacrifice means nothing to you.
I said I think of you constantly, and I do. Your investment in the rebellion is epic. The double life, every day a performance, the stress of that.
He might as well be talking about himself here.
We need heroes, Lonnie, and here you are.
And what do you sacrifice?
There is an anger brewing beneath the surface of Luthen Rael's calm, and I think that's where his sarcasm is rooted as well. For just like Palpatine, Luthen Rael is full of hatred. Although Luthen Rael's hatred is part self-loathing and disgust over the actions he must take. And what makes him different is he tries to desperately control his hatred, not let it affect his actions and thinking, whereas Palpatine fully lets his hatred fuel his every action.
Just stay with me, Lonnie. I need all the heroes I can get.
It's a horrible business to send fresh-faced young kids to their deaths, but someone has to do it. And Luthen Rael has gotten used to it by this point. Ultimately, Luthen Rael is whatever the rebellion needs him to be, and ultimately he has the skills of a chameleon. He is intelligent, knowledgeable, and very adaptable. And yes, he has great acting skills. Just like Palpatine, the alliance that Luthen Rael is trying to build comes from all walks of life. He'll need to cast the wide net in order to succeed, and so he'll need to talk to people from all different walks of life with different motivations and different political views, just like how the Sith gathered several very different individuals and factions and used them to create chaos in the galaxy during the Clone Wars. When Luthen Rael talks to Mon Mothma, the sheltered politician from Coruscant, a self-described pacifist, he must push her into violence. He must play the radical, the extreme revolutionary, test her to see just how committed she is to the cause. Mon Mothma is willing to sacrifice herself. She's willing to sacrifice her name and her wealth, but is she willing to sacrifice others? Because that is the responsibility a leader must take.
I hope she's worth it.
Well, we'll see, won't we? Can't hide forever.
But when Luthen actually faces a violent and chaotic revolutionary like Saw Gerrera, who is as unpredictable as he is destructive, he must play the voice of reason now. When Saw Gerrera sees assassins in the shadows and betrayal at every corner, Luthen Rael must calm him down.
We need to pull together, Saw. Whatever our final version of success looks like, there's no chance any of us can make it real on our own.
Others need to be pushed along in the right direction, come to a realization that they were on a singular path towards confrontation. To these people, Luthen Rael is just an accelerant, something that ignites the spark of rebellion that already exists in these types of people.
Oh, they'd hang me, wouldn't they? Take me up Brick's Road and hang me in the square. Wouldn't be the first time, would it? Isn't that where they hung your father?
Who are you?
So many faces, so many different personalities, it's hard not to get lost in all of the characters he plays. If it were not for Luthen Rael's steadfast focus on the prize, one could say that he has a mental illness. And in order to devote himself completely to the cause, he must actually destroy who he is as a person, destroy his true self, in order to be malleable.
What are you, Luthen? I've never really known. What are you?
The rebellion always needed a Palpatine. A mastermind who could guide their movement, pull the strings from the shadows, an individual hiding in plain sight that could not be easily destroyed or outed. They needed someone like Luthen Rael to make the horrible choices that the more pure and public-facing heroes of the rebellion could not. The cold truth about this battle between the rebellion and the Galactic Empire is that both sides use similar tactics to defeat the other side. Deception, murder, terrorism, whatever it takes. For there are no rules in conflicts like this, no lofty ideas, no morality. This is a dirty game that requires a person to abandon all that makes them human, all that makes them weak. The uneasy truth that Andor desperately tries to reveal to his audiences. This is not the prequels, this is not the original trilogy, and I understand why some people don't like Andor, because perhaps it strikes too close to reality. There's nothing glorious about joining a revolution. This is a decision that should not be made by those who are seeking fun or excitement or adventure. There's nothing fun about warfare or killing other people, and that's where the old media, where the prequels and the old trilogy get things wrong. That's where they lean too heavily into the entertainment without thinking about the consequences of their messages. What Andor presents is a reality that probably people don't want to hear about. And the truth about the rebellion is, the more desperate and outgunned the faction is, the dirtier they have to fight. And the rebellion was an extremely, extremely desperate movement. And finally, Andor does the right thing here and shows us just how horrific it can all be. To fight the Sith, you must have no reservations, just like the Sith. Which is why I find it amusing that so many people believe that Luthen Rael is somehow a Jedi. Now, he's something far more dangerous than those dogmatic Force users. Again, he's a man with a singular absolute function. He has a Sith-like focus, not on power, but destroying the Empire. He saves no room for ideology or belief systems because he needs to be absolutely efficient, completely dedicated to success. All Luthen Rael cares about are the pieces he moves around on the board, strategy and tactics that tip the scales in the rebellion's favor. But at the end of it all, there is a huge difference between Palpatine and Luthen Rael, and why I like Luthen Rael and I consider Palpatine a complete psychopath. Luthen Rael does all of this evil for the greater good. He covers himself in filth so that the leaders of the rebellion one day can truly claim to be heroes and remain unblemished enough to lead the galaxy towards hopefully a better future. And so there is no greater character in the rebellion, no individual more selfless and important to the overall movement. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.
30 men.
Plus Krieger.
For the greater good.
Call it what you will.
Let's call it war.